I am incredibly excited and honored to moderate the first conversation in this new How I Did It series by the Overseas Press Club. The conversation today will focus on Nadja Drost's reporting on the extraordinary journey of migrants from around the world who traveled the dangerous Darien Gap to reach the US. The Darien Gap is a roadless, mountainous jungle straddling the Colombia-Panama border. In recent remarks, Nadja described the migrants' harrowing journey as a man-made tragedy in an otherwise paradisiacal wilderness. A long-form piece about the Darien Gap she wrote for California Sunday magazine was awarded the 2021 Pulitzer Prize for feature writing. A television series about the Darien Gap in which Drost reported with videographer Bruno Federico for the PBS NewsHour was recognized with an Emmy and a Peabody Award. And just a few days ago, we learned that Nadja received the prestigious Michael Kelly Award given annually by The Atlantic. In their commendation, the judges described Drost as a meticulous and kind reporter, deeply committed to the truth and to the people she reports on. So for her piece in the California Sunday magazine, Nadja worked with editor Kit Rachlis, who is with us today as well. Welcome, Kit. Rachlis is a senior editor at ProPublica. In addition to California Sunday magazine, Rachlis also worked at The Atlantic, LA Weekly, and the American Prospect, among other publications. So the format for today's conversation is going to be the following. I will kick off the conversation with Nadja and Kit, and after about 20 minutes or so, 25 maybe, we'll open up for questions from you. So please feel free to start leaving the questions in the chat as they pop up in your mind. And you will also have the opportunity to raise your hand and to go on mute and ask your question yourself, if that's what you choose to do. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Nadja, let me start with you. What is the origin of this amazing story and how did it all start?
Thanks, Marina. So I had lived in Colombia for a decade before I started reporting this story. And when I lived there, I'd heard of this migration route. Once in a while, I would see local press accounts, perhaps a boat of migrants had capsized, perhaps Colombian authorities had apprehended African migrants making their way through Colombia on their way to Panama. And it was always just kind of these random accounts. So I knew that the route existed, but it was only in, I would say, maybe like the 2 years before I started reporting the story, I noticed that the numbers really had started to rise. And so that made me very curious about why, what kind of push factors perhaps were bringing migrants to this part of the world, why were so many people from such disparate places taking this route. So I became really curious about not only why was this route becoming more trafficked, but who were the people who were taking them and what was their experience. And so I decided with my partner and videographer, Bruno, that we wanted to try doing a story. I had the great advantage that I was able to learn from a past attempt that Bruno had taken to cross part of the Darien Gap the year before, and it really didn't go well. And he came back with a lot of hard-earned but really good lessons. And I also had the benefit of speaking a lot with Carlos Villalon, who's a Chilean photographer in Colombia, who has made the Darien his kind of long-term project for the last decade and who had already crossed a couple of times. And so talking with the two of them, we started to piece together what we wanted to try to do. Would it be possible to cross and how? And that's when I approached the Pulitzer Center for funding, when we realized this was going to be a very, very costly trip to do safely, and approached the PBS NewsHour to do a series and Kit at California Sunday.
So did you pick Kit first or California Sunday first?
Kit. Kit and I had already worked together on a story a few years earlier. It was a shorter and kind of different type of story, but he was my go-to person at California Sunday.
Kit, tell us what your first impression was when you got the pitch from Nadja.
Well, unbeknownst to Nadja, I had been deeply interested in assigning a piece about the Darien Gap at California Sunday. I had edited a piece about 18 or 19 months before about Tijuana, which was called the City of Exiles. And it was a piece about how, migrants were coming up from the South and also enormous number of people were being deported by the Trump administration into Mexico and into Tijuana, and there was this huge convergence. And in the piece, there was a paragraph that referred to a group of migrants, asylum seekers from North Africa, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, who had come through the Darien Gap. And there was a brief description of the Darien Gap. And I went, that's an extraordinary piece. Someone needs to do this piece. And I looked up what had been done, and there'd been two pieces. One was a peculiar kind of eco-tourism piece that was 7 or 8 years before in the New Yorker. And one was a piece in the Outside magazine, which was mostly about the writer's own experience and to a large degree ignored the experience of the migrants. And so I actually asked the writer of the Tijuana piece whether he was interested, and he looked at me aghast and said, he was completely ill-equipped to do this piece. Asked one other person, they got the same response within a week or so, and put it aside the way one does.
Yeah.
And then I got Nadja's proposal, which was the equivalent of 6 pages, if I recall correctly. And it was so smart, clearly knew what the story was. And when editors say something so smart, it agreed with my perspective. And 2, she had really begun to think about the logistics. And then 3, there was the financial support from the Pulitzer Center, which was big because California Sunday's idea of an expensive trip expenses was $2,500 or $3,000. It wasn't what this number was. And called up Nadja. We had, I think, a half an hour, 45-minute conversation. It only confirmed to me that this was an extraordinary piece and she was exactly the right person to do it. And brought it to the editor-in-chief of California Sunday. And I think who knew that I was interested in this and that I thought it was the right piece for the magazine. And I think he approved it within 3 days.
That's incredible.